Hello and welcome to the Dr. Elisa Show here on KUHS Denver Radio, TV, and we love to call it the stream. Thank you for joining me today. In case you haven't guessed or you just stumbled upon me, this is Elisa with the Dr. Elisa Show. And you know what? Today it's just us. I don't have a guest. It's just us chatting, and I'm so excited to just be with you today. So, how do you join me in the conversation? Because we're going to have a great one. You can go to Facebook and check out KUHS Denver and find them live on Facebook. Find that. You can find me on Facebook, the Dr. Elisa Show, and I'll be live there. And you can post comments, questions, responses on Facebook, and I'll be able to respond, to read them online. Also, if you've never done this before, we actually have a phone you can text here in the studio. The number is 720-386-0513. What I'm hoping today is we can have a bit of a conversation. So, before I ask you to text me, let me just remind you who I am and what you're listening to. So, the doctor's real, right? Psychology. And I have this kind of wild and crazy background. Was a geologist, I have degrees in geology. I have a PhD in psych. I've got a second master's in Jewish spirituality, and really did a lot of mystical studies there. I'm also a trained astrologer. Life has been a really wild, wonderful ride. And let me also say, if at some point today I sound really tired, it's because I got a puppy, a very large puppy. I have an 11-week-old, more than 20-pound Newfoundland puppy. If you know anything about big dogs, what you know is they're sweet and kind when they're little, and then they turn into velociraptors for a period of time, and then they turn into angels. So it's just how it goes. So we are in between the sweet and velociraptor stage right now. So if I sound a little disconnected, I'm just sleepy. It has nothing to do with you. What I'd love to talk about today is writing, and we're going to talk about that quite a bit. Before I do that, let me thank you. We're coming up on my 2-year anniversary, and in 2 weeks, in fact, I will have a 2-year anniversary with one of my dear friends who's an astrologer, and we will be talking about 2022. And yeah, there's some big stuff going on in 2022. Before you get worried and before you say, oh my gosh, I hope it's a better year, remember, the year is what we make of it. Are things looking up in many ways? They are. Do we still have to become fully present and embrace our own lives in 2022? Yes, we do. Are we going to be looking at our shadows? Yeah, we are. But that's okay. We're ready. We are ready to look at our shadow side and become stronger. This show is spiritually multilingual. I say that all the time. So if I say God and you want to hear spirit or universal energy or the force, great. If I say meditation and you want to hear prayer, just translate. It's okay. And please chat with me today. So again, Facebook, the Dr. Elisa Show, on Facebook, or KUHS Denver, and I'm just pulling up my Facebook pages to make sure we're live on both of those. Yes, you can put comments there so that you can chat with me, and you can text me at 720-386-0513. So today, why just me and you? I've been thinking a great deal about journeys of life. And you know, the tagline for the show has been igniting a renaissance of spirit. And yet, in many ways, what I've been doing is having very soulful conversations with people about their life journeys. And I realized not too long ago that a big part of my life journey was doing things against all odds. which is not how I want to do things anymore. But it was kind of how my life played out. It seemed like so many of the things I craved, I desired, I wanted, were on the other side of an obstacle. Or I was always told no. Or I was told how to do it, and that was in a way that I didn't want to do it. Or it didn't resonate with me in some way. And I had this life, and I'm wondering if this sounds like you, where so much of what I wanted in my life, I had to fight for. I had to kick open doors. I had to come in the side door instead of the front door. I joke, but it's true. I was rejected by two of the institutions that I have graduate degrees from. So there's my theory was there's always a way. There's always a way. I don't know how it's going to work, but there's always a way. And one of those areas where I had to deal with that fear is in being an author, a writer. And today what I want to talk about is that. What I'd love to hear from you is if you're an artist, a writer, in some creative field, if you have also dealt with this. I really want to know. So I have lots of friends who are fine artists. They're painters, they're sculptors, and they'll always say to me, no, you don't get to be an artist, you're an author. Like, okay, I got that. One of them said, no, I'm a creative, you're not. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going with that one. So if you're in a creative field, I want to know if this resonates with you. I'm an author, not an artist, great. You're a photographer, you're a fine artist, you're a graphic designer, you're into digital design, you're web design, media, whatever it is. I want to know if this resonates with you. So we're going to start with a story that's not a story about a long time ago, but a story. And again, you can give me a thumbs up on Facebook. Thank you for everyone who's already doing that. Just give me a thumbs up or a hi there. Say hi to me. Or text me here in the studio. So I was born in a time where I was sort of in between, right? In between hippie and whatever came after that. Way before goth. Goth was definitely not a thing. But I was kind of this kid who was into, if you remember the old TV show, The Addams Family, and ghost stories, and my bedroom was haunted, so that's probably one reason. I was way into wanting to be read tarot cards and read crystal balls, and in fact I have some of my crystal balls hanging out with me today. Just so you know, just for like emotional support. I was into mystical, magical things in a family with a matriarch who did not believe in any of that stuff at all. And since she didn't believe in that stuff, that wasn't really accepted. But I wrote ghost stories as a kid. So I was kind of bullied in school. I was chubby. I was maybe beyond chubby. I was not very good at that athletics. I was reasonably smart, but not the smartest kid on the block. And all of that led to, I was kind of bullied. Okay, so I was bullied. But I had this amazing imagination, and I could tell stories like crazy. And so I'm wondering, do you remember when we would get spelling lists maybe? I don't know if people do this anymore. And we had to write sentences that use those words in a sentence, or we could write stories. And I wrote stories. I wrote ghost stories. And I would read those ghost stories to the class. And these again were the kids that, given the option of being nice to me or bullying me on the playground, right? I definitely was not part of the crew. It was kind of an interesting pattern in my life, that of being on the sidelines. Except when I read my stories. And then they all wanted to listen. They all wanted to hear my ghost stories. So my first feedback about writing was actually pretty good. And then, one day, and I remember this so vividly, I can still smell I was sitting in the kitchen of my great aunt's house, and there were women cooking, and I can still smell the soup on the stove. I can smell everything. It was probably a Jewish holiday, and I was reading one of my stories, and my grandmother was there. And I remember reading the story, and at the end of it, her turning to me and saying, "Can't you write about nicer things?" And then immediately letting me know that if I wanted to be a writer, I was going to have to major in English. And I was going to have to learn how to spell. And I can tell you I still have not learned how to spell. Spell check was absolutely invented for me. Dyslexia runs in the family. And I'm horrible at proofreading. It's just life. I try and there I am. So I'm good at math. So I'm not sure if that counts. Anyway. Here I am, this thing I've wanted to do forever, and now I have this major judgment. And not even, that was an interesting story. Could you tell me more? Maybe you could simply don't write about that. So I stopped reading my stories to my family, and definitely to her. And then was criticized. She kept asking me, "Why won't you read me your stories? Why won't you read to me? You used to read me your stories." And of course I was still this kind of pre-goth kid into mystics and magic and crystal balls and tarot cards and I don't know, black candles and whatever. And so while the rest of the kids around me, when I was growing up, had long straight hair and I had frizzy whatever and were thin, you remember sort of the image, right? Thin and lithe and good at sports and good at social justice and a vocabulary that captured people's hearts when they talked about the rights. I wanted to save whales. I was into whales and forests. And I wrote in secret. And then I went off to college. My family referred to it as when I ran away from home, because I went away. Anyway, before I go on, any of you have a similar experience? Your creative self that was shut down early? Go to Facebook, The Dr. Elisa Show, or KUHS Denver, which is this amazing radio TV show, or text me, just a yes or a thumbs up or a happy face or something, right? 720-386-0513. Or if you're one of my clients, you guys know my other phone number. You can text me on my regular phone number and give me some feedback. So I went away, and I was still, tarot cards went with me, and all that stuff went with me, and I occasionally was asked if I was a witch or a psychic or something, because I had precognitive dreams. I'd had this ghost in my bedroom when I was growing up. I had really weird things happen around me and to me, and it just was very bizarre. So I wrote about those, but I kept it kind of quiet. At this point, I'm majoring in geology. I'm trying to get a degree in a hard science. I'm having to write in college, and there's rules. You don't write creatively in your sociology class. You definitely don't write creatively in your chemistry or your physics or whatever class. Geology maybe a little, but still not as much. So I did learn to write that way. But my journals, my private, were where I dreamed novels alive, where I recorded things I saw in my crystal balls or my tarot readings or whatever it was. Or maybe just mystical wonderings. Ghost stories, haunted houses. That went on for quite a while. And I was getting so much braver about writing. And then, a little known fact about me, some of you know this, I was working for a major oil company, and this was way before the Me Too movement and way before, I don't know, even civility when it came to how we spoke to each other, though I do agree civility may have disappeared. But there was a period in there where we tried to be civil with each other. way before that. And I ended up suing this oil company on sexual harassment discrimination. And if you think this is easy and you could just do something like this, really think again. If I had known what this would take emotionally, I never would have had the courage to do it. So not only were they able to get into my checking account, because this was before there were like protections for people, right? Where if somebody had your social number, they could just, and they did, it was my employer, they just could see where I banked, and they, you know, most of us banked in the same place, and that's where we, you know, they got a hold of detailed information about me, let me put it that way. And then I was in front of a judge, and they asked if they could send me to a psychiatrist, because clearly if I was not happy with the way I was being treated and talked about and denied promotions and the slurs that were used for women, if I was not happy with that, because, you know, they paid me, there was clearly something wrong with me. And in fact, maybe it was a witch. It came back to haunt me. And that psychiatrist got access to my private journals. Just think about that for a second. I'm discovering my writing self again, and wow, I have this stranger who's been hired by the oil company to read my private journals, and she then, her report to the lawyers was a synopsis of that. So then these lawyers in front of this judge have elements of my journal. Now luckily, I will say I tended to destroy journals as I went, so I only had one. And it wasn't as, I don't know, personal as some of the others had been. But even so, I stopped writing. I wouldn't put anything in writing. People would say that, like, document that. No, I will write for academia, I will be a published professor, I will do those things, and they will not show that other part of me. And yet that part snuck out over and over again. So I'm sure most of you have not sued a major oil company, but have you had that experience of something you yearned for, and then you know, somebody punished you for it? Somebody didn't just deny you the opportunity, but chastised you in a very public way, perhaps. Come on. Some of you know my private number. Text me. Some of you, well, all of you know the studio number, 720-386-0513. And most of you could go to Facebook and give me a comment. Well, so you might think that's the end of the story, but the truth is, I love to write. And writing for me is a combination of fear and joy. In fact, when I'm writing well, sometimes I'm terrified. I don't know if that's a thing. I have talked to one of my author friends, and she says, yeah, sometimes the writing is just coming out of you so quickly. It's scary. The words are flowing, or the thoughts are flowing. And it's joyful, but it's joyful mixed with a kind of terror. Maybe it's going down like a double diamond run, and you know you're doing it well, but the next bump's coming and you're worried about it. It's something that is a combination, right, of adventure and maybe it's an adventure. Maybe that's it. It's a journey of adventure. And maybe all is art like that. And again, I'd love to hear from you and know if that's true for you. So, where's the story going? That's my lead-in to the fact that I'm still an author, that I re-embrace that part of myself. You've heard me talk about my first book, Way of the Well. I think I've read parts of that book on the show here. And you can find that one on Amazon, on Kindle, or in hard copy. But what I want to talk to you about is my new book. I actually had a story that has been in my head for 30 years that was really wild and crazy. And over 2020, when we were under major lockdown, I decided to finally write it, to finally have the courage to write another novel. And to not just write it and put it out there, but write it and talk about it and publicize it and give it a life. And that's what I want to talk about today, is that process of giving life to your artistic endeavor. You know, we've talked about so many things on this show. We've talked about giving to others and being a philanthropist and the soul's journey, and we've talked about it from lots of points of views from the outside of us, right? The spiritual journey, the entrepreneurial journey, the financial security journey, all of those. What about the artistic journey? That's today. What is your artistic journey? And even if you don't think you're artistic, I gotta say, humans are simply creative at their core. Do you knit? Do you sew? Do you cook? Do you spin tales? Do you sing? Do you weave? Do you simply see the world in a different way? A way that is sort of your gift to the world, is how you see the world differently. My astrology friends are so creative in how they interpret those charts. And trust me, reading a crystal ball is highly creative. So I want to talk to you about this book. The new book I've got is called Dark Fire, and it is available for pre-sale on Amazon. And if you think I'm pushing a book today, I am. I'm pushing a book, you're right. And I don't feel bad pushing it, because you can buy it on Kindle for 99 cents. It will release on the 31st of December, so you'll be able to read it over the New Year's weekend, and I think that'd be lovely. But you can order it now. You can do it, you can pre-order it. And at 99 cents, I'm almost willing to give you a money-back guarantee. If you don't think that book is worth 99 cents, I'll fine. I'll reimburse you. How about if I reimburse you half of that? And say, here, I'll give you 50 cents back on that 99 cents you spent. So let me just talk about the process of writing this book. And again, let me know if this is how your process. So I've had people say to me, so do you diagram your book? And maybe some people do. Do you do a storyboard for your book? And I'm sure people do that. I had the notion of a story. I had the very beginning, some middle pieces, and then this sort of climax. But when I tried to write it, I realized it wasn't a full story. Maybe it wasn't even a short story. It was a little tiny, like, folktale almost. So I wrote a little bit, and then it was 2020 summer. I'd go for a long walk, and the first thing I did was create the characters, and then the characters started talking to me. And I have talked to my mentor, who's a very well-known author, Joanne Greenberg, and she said if the characters are talking to you, the book is in motion. This is a one profound way to write. And I'd get the next part of the book, and I'd come back and I'd write, and then I'd run out of story and I'd go ride my bike, or I'd go drop the kayak in, or I'd go for another walk. I mean, this was 2020. I wasn't doing a whole lot. And I was spending a lot of time outdoors, and I even had to put my dog down, so I was profoundly alone. And my company was these characters. In fact, let me read you something. So the main character in the book is Tamra, and she has a degree in psychology, and she's opened a little bar restaurant in, like a pub, in downtown Denver neighborhood that is, off downtown. That is just a growing neighborhood. And it's been successful. She's done a good job with it. She's getting a little bored. The name of the pub is Embers. And she's trying to figure out what's next in her life. She's the main character. And then things are just weird in the pub. People are ordering weird drinks, and it's almost fall, but it's still summer weather, and she doesn't know what's going on. And so we introduce the next character. So she's opening a bottle of wine, house wine, which is Vampire Cabernet. And yes, that brand does exist. Vampire is a really nice California red wine. Here's what happens. I managed to open the bottle and pour out several glasses without spilling any. And right on cue, in walked my favorite vampire. Well, actually, I'm not sure if Count was a vampire, or even if I believed in vampires, or if his real name was Count. But if vampires were real, he'd be perfect for the part. He moved his body like a cougar, lithe as a dancer with a sense of power waiting to explode. His skin was a bit pale, but of course, he probably had to hide from the sun. He had thick black hair laced with silver strands, and a perfectly strokable, well-trimmed black and silver beard and mustache that seemed to come and go in response to the weather. His eyes were a startling light gray that reflected light and matched his fashionably silver gray and black clothing. And then there were his hands, square and strong and attached to long muscular arms that I, only at times, dreamed of crawling into. I was fairly sure he'd be willing, but I really wanted to determine whether he was alive or undead before I slept with him. Otherwise, it could be quite awkward, having him kiss me and nibble on my neck with those full lips and perfectly white teeth and slightly larger canines, especially if I awoke in the morning and he was still asleep in a coffin. I let that daydream go just slightly too far and had to shake myself to break the spell. Those are the two main characters in this book. And so I would take a walk and they would chat with me. I'm just wondering, if you're a painter, is that how that happens? Do you walk away from your paint and then from your canvas and then it comes alive? Do you walk away from your sculpture and it comes alive? So I just have to tell you that I'm having a little bit of internet trouble in the studio here today. So if you're posting in Facebook, I haven't seen it, but I'm going back and forth with my, the internet seems to be okay, but I don't know, Facebook isn't working. I'd love to hear from you. What is your artistic process like, and is this resonating? 720-386-0513. If you just joined me, you're listening to KUHS Denver, the stream, radio, TV, international. Wherever you are, I'd love to hear from you. And of course, you may not be anywhere close, but that's okay. I can deal with that. I'm getting a whole bunch of likes on my page, and so that's perfect. Dr. Elisa Show on Facebook. If you're just liking it, I'm good. I think that's grand. Just keep going. Okay. Thank you for all the likes. And I've had a couple texts on my private line, so I'm glad people are responding there. So if you're afraid you're the first one responding, you're not, go ahead and put some notes in there for me. Okay, back to writing this book. So, do you like vampires? I wasn't sure about the vampire, but I knew that that was part of the book somehow. And she had to discover this. What really was a vampire? And I'll get to that in a minute. She also has a pet octopus. So this was like one of the wildest parts of the book. I gotta tell you. I'll read you a bit, but I'll do a synopsis for you at some point. So she rescued this young BMAC octopus, which they're very small, little, and they're very cute. And it was in a recent case, because she's got sort of a private detective company on the side. And she loved having an octopus. It was mostly nocturnal and very intelligent, which octopuses are. And it's octopuses, not octopi. So let me read you about Lenore. Oh, yeah, the octopus, her name is Lenore. She'd been confined to a small, dark aquarium when I found her, listless and depressed, barely eating, in the home of a young man with dreams of glory. Perhaps all young men have such dreams, but in this case, his dreams led him to try and raise exotic animals. He did it poorly, and I was lucky enough to rescue several. The rest of the animals were adapting to a new home in various wonderful rescues, and after some interesting negotiations with the aquarium, Lenore came home with me. That would probably change at some point in the future, since BMACs have such short lives, and the aquarium would want her back soon. She was turning a warm red, the color she used when she was happy, or at least I think she's happy. and the two distinct spots that all BMACs have roughly above their eyes seem to be staring at me. These markings look like large eyes that can be startling the first time you see them, and still caught me off guard occasionally. So she goes over and she checks the tank, and she checks and makes sure, and then she sort of throws some food in and watches the octopus eat. And Tamara says, my lifestyle doesn't really leave much time for a dog, especially one of the giant breeds I love. There's something magical, though, about having a four-legged partner that was larger than me, or maybe a large and luscious two-legged partner for that matter. But for now, a small eight-legged housemate would do just fine. So here we go. We've got Lenore, and enter the next person, or the next character. And this was all stuff that I had the original story. Believe it or not, there's a horse. And of course there's a horse. Why wouldn't there be a horse? And she has to find the horse because she's trying to find a guy. And the guy owns the horse. And the guy has stolen some magic books from Count, the maybe vampire, that move Mercury permanently retrograde. Can't really happen, but hey, it's a book, it's a novel, I can make it happen, right? And so she manages to find the horse, whose name is Pyre. You know, like a funeral pyre? Yeah, fire, right? And she meets him, and she takes Lenore out in a traveling aquarium that she has, so she can travel with Lenore, and takes the octopus with her. Because, you know, if you have a dog, you take the dog with you, so why wouldn't you take your octopus with you? And then she opens the door, she meets the horse, she opens the car door, and the octopus and the horse see each other. The horse cocks his head and twitches his ears back and forth. Lenore was pressed up against the side of her tank, slowly changing colors from pink to deep red and back again. She was clearly flirting, and Pyre, well, he was flirting back. This interspecies connection was fascinating to watch. Lenore changed colors, stretched out her arms and drew them back in, and then curled them around and up in something resembling an exotic dance. Pyre, meanwhile, bobbed his head up and down, flicked his ears, and elevated his tail. Then he spun around and curved his neck. Lenore was enjoying the display and kept dancing and changing colors. This was clearly love at first sight that was destined to be unrequited. So, we've got an octopus in love with a horse, and you would think that's what this book is about. But actually, this book is about healing lineage wounds. So we're going to talk about that for a minute. If you're listening, if you've just tuned in, I hope that today is engaging you. No guest, just the two of us talking about the creative process and what that is for you. What is your creative process? Maybe your creative process is part of your spiritual journey. I discovered it was part of mine. And you know, 2020 was a year where I think we did so much discovery like that. 2021 has continued that process for many of us. I have to say that both of these years have been years marked by fear. Yes, lots of joy, lots of excitement, lots of accomplishments, and lots of fear. Fear of each other. How can we trust each other? Who's vaccinated, who's not? Who's on this side or that side? Who believes A and who believes B? Who's contagious and who's not? And what is reality? And how do we know what's right? How do we know what's right for us? You know, humans are a lot like other animals. We grew up, we evolved, walking across these savannas, and our brain responded to the movements around us. We don't have claws or really sharp teeth, or we're not humongous, we aren't T-Rexes, we're not grizzly bears. We grew up, we evolved more like horses, having to be aware of our environment because we were prey and we had to learn how to survive. And 2020, I think, evoked in many of us that spiritual need for survival again in a different way. And we had to face our fears, our deep fears. Not just our fears of getting sick and dying, but our fears of being right or wrong, our fears of the life I've lived has been of value or not of value. I've told my stories, I've lived my life, I've embraced people, I've loved people, or have I run away? Have I lived who I truly am, or have I taken on an outer shell so that I could survive? And what happens when I take off that shell? You know, much like when a crab sheds that shell and has to crawl under a rock until it grows a new one. What happens? That was 2020 and 2021. It won't be 2022, I can tell you, if we're willing and able to look at those fears. So the reason I'm talking about this creative endeavor, the reason I'm talking about my book and my writing, is because I want you to feel that you too can embrace a life where you can see your fears, you can see your shadow side, and know that it is brilliant and beautiful in so many ways. And that's what this book, Dark Fire, is actually about. Yeah, it starts with a maybe vampire and an octopus falling in love with a horse, but what it's really about is a woman embracing her own darkness. And not dark as evil, because dark isn't evil. Think about the symbol of yin and yang. They're dark and light. And at one point in the book, actually, when somebody's trying to explain this to her, they bring out a crystal glass that is polished. Two of them. And they put one on a piece of white velvet and one on a piece of black velvet. And they say to her, which shines brightly? Clearly, it is the black velvet, the dark, that brings out the light in something. You know, we're kind of like fish. Fish don't know what water is. Well, when we're out in the daylight, when we're in bright light, we don't know. We can't distinguish that, oh my gosh, I'm so glad it's light. In the springtime, when it's been dark, we do. We embrace it because it's been dark. We only know that light because of the dark. And so for her, she journeys. She journeys to the pool of darkness. And how does she get there? Well, you might guess there's a consistent theme. I've talked about it on the show, and I have talked about it in both books. So I'm pretty sure you've seen me with my crystal balls. Ooh. What is the ISBN and what does it mean? Thank you. If you go to Amazon.com, there is, Kindles don't have an ISBN, and the Kindle is what is up right now. I will be able to post the ISBN for the hard copy, which will also be available at the end of the month. And in fact, I hopefully could make that available in time for Christmas, so I will make that. And it is, the book is called Dark Fire. So if you go to Amazon and you put in my name, Elisa Robin, Dark Fire, it will pop right up, and you can pre-order it on Amazon. And I will also let you know what the ISBN numbers. Thank you for asking me. Kindles don't have an ISBN. So you're asking me what it means, so I'm not sure what you mean by that. Oh, what does the name Dark Fire mean? Great question. So let me finish this. And then somebody's asked, you're interested in writing a book. So let's discuss this some more. Okay. And yes, I can discuss it offline, but yes, we'll discuss it some more. So you've seen me do this here. You've seen me with my crystal balls. There's a theme in both books, The Way of the Well, which is about the light, and Dark Fire, which is about the dark. And you take a crystal glass, it can be just glass, but it has to be see-through, and you put a red or a dark liquid in it. You can use grape juice, I prefer red wine. And you put it so that you can see the flame of a candle behind it. Maybe a votive, but a low candle. You can hold it in your hands and look through it that way, or set them down. But you need to be able to see the light of the candle through the glass, through the wine, through the red liquid. And when you look at the deepest part of the flame, what you will see is a dark flame, a dark fire. That flame, that dark part of the fire, that deep dark, that is the dark, that's dark fire. And dark fire is where you see, where when you are using a crystal ball, you try to get to there. It's that deeply meditative place, if you're into meditation. Using this is a way to learn to use a crystal ball. It is where you see things. Now, am I doing this to predict the future? I'm using it as a deeply meditative technique. And yes, if you've seen me on this show with my crystal balls and my tarot cards, often I know things. Often I can channel. I can be a medium by going into the dark fire. So, I hope that made sense. Thank you for asking. Interested in writing a book, so let's talk about that. I think that writing a book has to start with a craving, because so much in life has to start with that. And it has to start with the courage to tell your story. Whatever that is, a craving to tell your story. And then the courage to tell your story. And in both of my books, I am talking about lineage wounds. So think about that. Family wounds, cultural wounds, wounds that go way back in time. I didn't know that was what I was writing. I was telling ghost stories. And yet, maybe I was trying to reconcile my relationship with that woman who told me to write about nicer things way back when. But I'm not the person who writes light, airy, fluffy. I write other stuff. I write about this. Let me read you another little bit. About studying darkness. The gateways of darkness are not evil. Darkness isn't evil. It's the energy that balances the gateways of light from Miriam's well in the Jewish mythology. The first book, Way of the Well, it's about Miriam's well. It is the darkness that, in the darkness that we see the light. It is the darkness that holds the wisdom of the seer, the prophetess, and the mystic, if they have the courage to journey on that path. And let me say that any spiritual journey takes courage. If it's a true spiritual journey, it takes courage. Okay, I want to just read you this little tiny bit, and then we'll talk more about writing. If you've just tuned in, it's just me and you, the Dr. Elisa Show, on KUHS Denver, the stream. You can text me, 720-386-0513. If you're one of my clients, you know my private number. You can text me there and let me know what you think. If you're watching on Facebook, you're watching me on TV, I'm in black and red today, an appropriate set of colors to talk about vampires. You can message me there. But I want to just read you this bit. And so, Tamara journeys to the well. So not the Miriam's well of light, but to the pool of darkness. She journeys by looking through the crystal, actually it's a wine glass, to the flame, to the dark part of the flame, the dark fire. And as she's doing that, the scene shifts. I found myself in a huge cave, with only a hint of light entering from the cracks in the roof. I was barefoot, and I felt the warm, rough rock under my feet, much like a pumice massage. I stood in front of large iron gates that were pieces of art. The metal had been turned and twisted and bent into the shape of a dragon with wings emerging from the center of several books. The work was so well done that I could almost see the wings move and the pages turn. The gates slowly swung open before me, and I descended 3 broad steps and found myself at the edge of a shallow pool of still, dark blue water. For some reason, I was dressed in a large flowing robe, loosely belted around my hips. Without thinking, I untied the belt, slipped the robe off my shoulders, and let it fall in a puddle around my feet. The water was calling to me, and I stepped into the pool. I was surprised to find it was warm and almost soft. The The water caressed my skin, feeling like fine silk as I headed to the center of the pool, leaned back into the water and let it support me. I floated without effort. My arms and legs relaxed as my head spread out around my head. This was the place of divination, the place of knowing, the place of women of my lineage had come in secret for generations. This was the place guarded by the gateways of darkness. Okay, I hope you like this. It's really hard to read your own work. This is what takes courage. You see typos, you always see typos, right? That happens, especially if you're me. And you wonder when you read it if it makes sense to anybody else. How do you write a book? You have a craving. You have the edge of a story. And then you have courage. How do you paint? You have a blank canvas. Actually, I have to ask my friends how they paint. But you have a craving to draw or to paint or to sculpt. And there's something blank in front of you. And a sense you have of the story that you're going to tell with that. And you have the courage to start. And sometimes that's all you have, is the courage to start. So the story in this case goes on, and she meets some other helpers, other guardians of the gate, and then she meets other women of the pool. An old woman Safta Laila, who guards some of the knowledge. And the men who are the guardians of the gate, they know that the women do the heavy lifting here. They're the ones who go to the pool. They do the healing. They're the guardians. And I have to tell you, one of my early teachers, who was a medicine woman, said that male and female energy is different. Not men and in case you haven't figured that out, we're just different. And it doesn't mean we can't both do everything. But male energy is meant to guard, and women energy, right? To guard women energy while they do this kind of work, this deep work, this spiritual work. And so they're the guardians, the women do the work, they go to the pool, and they heal the brokenness in their hearts. And how do they do that? They do it, they go back through their lineage. But first you have to heal your own heart. And trust me, life is not all about healing. But sometimes we have to heal to embrace life. And when we heal, we discover those cracks that are in our hearts, the cracks that let the light in. Leonard Cohen sang that, right? The Buddha says that. The cracks are where God comes in. The cracks are where the light comes in. Maybe the cracks are where love comes in. I just got this puppy, and I have to tell you that I was scared. One, it's a lot of work. But two, I knew she would crack open any parts of my heart that were still closed. And that's terrifying, because it lets the love flow in. And then I get mushy. And then I say things that make me feel like I'm just being silly, or maybe I get weepy. Then I love more deeply. And then that's scary. And maybe that's why writing is scary, because it also breaks open my heart. And this is a book about that, about then healing the heart. And the legend of this pool, and that going to the heart and finding your own healing. Now what's interesting in here, I have to say, is that when Tamara does that first journey that heals her own heart, it hurts. Because healing sometimes hurts. She has to let that wound be open. But once it's open, the dark brings in the beauty. And it's filled in this book with crystals of light. Not crystals that are hard, but the beauty of the crystals shimmering in her heart. Rainbow-colored crystals. And in fact, later she goes on to help other women heal their hearts in the same way. And that is the story. How she goes back through this lineage of women and finds the first woman of her lineage, the woman Tamar, from the biblical story of Tamar, who was betrayed by Judah, and heals her heart. And then all that healing comes forward. And then guess what? Those guys who are the guardians of the gate, well, all those people who broke their hearts, they've been living off that pain. Living off, sort of sucking them dry like vampires. They are now cut loose. And the guardians of the gate go after them, to find them and let them heal. by apologizing, by finding a way to live that isn't living through somebody else's pain. And isn't that just sort of a lovely message? I don't need somebody's pain to make me feel full and loved and alive. Okay. All right. What I'm hoping right now is that I have inspired you to read the rest of this book, because clearly I can't read the whole book to you, and that would be, a little much for this show. How do you find it? Because thank you, somebody who just texted me that and messaged me, where do you find the book? I'll put the link in my, in fact, the link is on my Facebook page. But if you go to Amazon.com, put my name in, Elisa. Actually, if you put my name in, you'll see all 3 of my books. The Way of the Well was my first one, but you don't have to read it first. It's available on Kindle and hard copy. And you can see Dark Fire, available for pre-order on Kindle. And it will be live December 31st. So what I'm hoping you will do is perhaps, order it, pre-order it, so that when it does go live, we will have a whole bunch of you who've bought it, and we'll get a little traction on it. I'm looking for other comments. Okay, thank you on my private text for letting me know that this has inspired you to go do your own writing. How do you write? How do you live a creative life? I have to say that yes, I do other things that I feel that are spiritual. I do blessings, I do Shabbat candles, I do prayers, I do those, but I have to say that I do those with a creative sense of spirit, and that it is living a life that is also creative, that is part of my spiritual journey. When I have someone in my life who's lost someone, let's say they're hurting, I will knit a scarf for them and fill that scarf with love as I knit it. Raising a puppy is a creative journey. I've got to raise her with love, and at the same time teach her what it means to be a dog someday. And if you don't know, if you're adopting a puppy, understand they start as a puppy, they turn into a velociraptor, and then they become a dog. And you have to love them through that time. And doing that teaches you to love yourself through that creative process time. When you're writing a book and you're sure everything you write is terrible. Here's the other offer I'm going to make to all of you if you made it through this show. If you pre-order my book, go to Amazon, and you email me, and you'll find me at elisarobin.com. My email is right there. You can email me, elisarobin@msn.com, and you just put your little code in there that says you have an order number. I can't find out anything else about you. I'm going to send you a video of how to learn to read a crystal ball. Since using the candle and the glass and the fire, the dark flame, is part of both of those books, that if you buy the book, if you pre-order it, I'm going to send you a gift. But you have to email me and let me know you pre-ordered it, okay? You go to Amazon and do that. If you want to talk about writing, let me know. Email me. You want me to bring on another author on the show? I've got next year and this coming year, I've got some amazing things planned for the show next year. Talk to me. In fact, let me just say that. I have spent 2 years talking with you, not at you. I'm hoping that this has been a conversation and we're becoming friends. Talk to me. Text the studio, email me, go to my website, and if you go to my website, you can sign up for my blogs. What will happen is every 2 weeks, you'll get a blog and you'll get a link to the show, so that if you've missed my show, you'll be able to see it, because I send it out. And you'll know what I'm doing. It's not, honestly, every 2 weeks. It's not too bad. Read my blogs, because it's another place I'm trying to be brave and hoping to encourage you to be brave. Okay, guess what? That's it. That's it for today. I've been with you now for, a little shy of an hour. And what I hope you have taken from today is a tad bit of inspiration, just a little. You can create, you can knit, you can sew, you can paint, and here's the thing, don't try to write a bestseller. Just write. Don't try to be the next Picasso. Be you. Don't try to knit something that's so perfect it would sell for $500. Knit something full of love. Express yourself and give that to the world, because that's what counts. Okay, I want you to stay tuned because after me there's the amazing Henry Archuleta with his show and some amazing music, incredible music. And I want you to come back in 2 weeks and tune in. My friend Jennifer Dove, who's an incredible astrologer, and I will be talking about the astrology of 2022. You don't want to miss that. And in the meantime, please message me, chat with me, buy the book, let me know you bought it. Let me teach you how to read a crystal ball using a wine glass. And until then, please stay healthy, absolutely. Stay hopeful and stay inspired.